You don't have to be a couch potato to be a fan of brilliant TV shows, and if you can't get enough of your favorite show, where can you turn? Video games. Some of the best shows ever made have inspired video games that are, and in some cases are definitely not, worth playing. Before we dive in, please give us a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our videos. Without further ado, let's take a look at 10 unknown video games based on popular shows. The Walking Dead – Survival Instinct. AMC's The Walking Dead has been eviscerating the ratings charts ever since its debut in 2010. No matter how many main characters are gobbled up by zombies or get their heads bashed in by barbed wire baseball bats, the series shows no signs of slowing down or stopping. With The Walking Dead's key demographic overlapping nicely with the gaming audience, it's no surprise we've seen our fair share of Walking Dead video games. The most notable of these is the TELLTALE adventure game series from 2012. One you may have missed out on was the 2013 first-person shooter The Walking Dead Survival Instinct. This Xbox 360-era game acts as a prequel to the show. It takes place as the zombie outbreak begins and stars fan-favorite Daryl Dixon and his brother as they make their way to Atlanta, where they'll eventually meet Rick Grimes and company. Despite some top-notch voice acting from Norman Reedus and other cast members of the TV show, the game falls flat as a shooter. The stealth mechanics are buggy, the graphics are lackluster, and the level design leaves much to be desired. Walking Dead fans would be better served with the Telltale series. Game of Thrones, a Telltale game series. Speaking of Telltale games, the developer is responsible for the next game on the list, a game that's actually phenomenal. By this point, everyone knows Game of Thrones is one of the biggest TV shows on the planet. Based on a long-running series of best-selling fantasy novels, the show streamlines all those door-stoppers to bring its most exciting and dramatic scenes to life. It's quite an achievement. So you'd think more people would be interested in the Telltale adventure game based on the show. It's set firmly in HBO's interpretation of the material, right down to using the show's cast for likenesses and voice acting whenever you run into a character from the show. You play as 3 members of House Forrester, who are loyal to the Starks in the north. Unfortunately for you, the War of Five Kings is just revving up, and the Starks are making some questionable decisions that don't bode well for their future. Fans of the show will know how some of those decisions eventually play out, but the Forresters have their own tough choices to make in the meantime. It all makes for a compelling adventure game filled with honor, deceit, and bloodshed over the course of its 5 episodes. Fans of the show should seek this game out. Grey's Anatomy, the video game. Another extremely popular, though quite different TV show is the medical drama Grey's Anatomy. This series has been serving up medical problems and behind-the-scenes drama since its debut in 2005. Just as a busy hospital makes a perfect setting for a dramatic TV show, it also makes a fantastic backdrop for a video game. After all, treating ailing bodies in games goes back to Operation, a board game about trying to tweeze items out of a man's gaping wounds without touching the sides. Grey's Anatomy, the video game, landed on the Nintendo DS in 2009, but you can still play it on a 3DS or 2DS system. It's essentially a collection of mini-games that plays out over the equivalent of a 5-episode story arc, and you can actually tell the game was made with the help of the show's writing staff because the story feels entirely true to the show. Depending on the scene, you'll fill the shoes of characters like George, Meredith, and the Chief. You'll play mini-games to help them choose conversation responses and make decisions. You'll even get to take a stab at performing surgery and completing other life-or-death medical procedures. The minigames tend to be easy, but that probably won't bother you if you're a fan of the show. The X-Files, Resist or Serve. Thanks to an influx of money from the likes of Netflix, Amazon, and others, it seems like no TV franchise is too dead to be resurrected. Look at shows like Arrested Development, Full House, Gilmore Girls, and Twin Peaks. Inspired by some of those revivals, Fox decided to resurrect one of its own cult classic series in 2016, The X-Files. While the new season didn't get a video game to accompany it, fans might want to take this as an opportunity to check out the 2004 PlayStation 2 game The X-Files, Resist or Serve. Like the show, the game centers around Mulder and Scully, a pair of FBI special agents who investigate any incident with a whiff of paranormal about it. The game is set during the 7th season of the show and is comprised of 3 episodes that start with you traveling to Colorado to investigate a mysterious reappearance and a trio of suspicious deaths. Before long, you're whisked away to Russia to seek out a spaceship that crashed a century century ago. The game itself makes fine use of its survival horror gameplay mechanics. Not only is it an enjoyable fright fest, but it's also a solid addition to the X-Files lore, feeling like a new story arc in the well-established fictional world. The Bachelor. The Bachelor was one of the pioneers of reality TV, and it's still going strong to this day. It puts an eligible man or woman front and center and invites a group of 24 or so members of the opposite sex to compete for their love. Fail to make a connection and you'll find yourself going home early. Charm them on dates and you might get invited for an overnight stay in the fantasy suite, or if you really play your cards right, you might get engaged. This might not seem like a premise that would lend itself well to a video game, but it didn't stop Warner Brothers from bringing it to Wii and Nintendo DS in 2010. The game lets you pick a bachelor or bachelorette from the show to compete for their love and affection. You do so by going on dates revolving around completing puzzles and playing minigames to make a good impression on the man or woman of your dreams. On Wii, you can even play a multiplayer mode where you and your friends try to run interference while your opponent is in a romantic moment. If you're a fan of the show who still has a Wii or Wii U hooked up to your TV, give it a go. The Sopranos: Road to Respect. The Sopranos is widely regarded as one of the greatest television shows ever made. It's largely credited with sparking the golden age of television we find ourselves in right now. It's a classic series about a disgruntled mob boss and the problems springing from both his life at home and his life of crime. What you might not know is that The Sopranos was also the basis for a 2006 video game subtitled Road to Respect. The game features voice acting from the show's cast and tells a new story set between seasons 5 and 6. Unfortunately for all involved, the game is rather abysmal. You play as a young wannabe thug who meets the Soprano crew and starts running missions for them. It's set up like an episode of the TV show, but while the voice acting is top-notch, the story isn't up to par. It doesn't help that the gameplay suffers from balancing issues, making it all too easy to steamroll over opponents. It's not bad enough to sully the golden reputation the show earned itself, but that's more a testament to the show's quality than the game's. Whether you're a Sopranos fan or not, this is one game to avoid. Alf. As hard as it may be to believe for those who didn't live through this strange era of television, there was a time when a popular sitcom revolved around a family living with and hiding a wisecracking alien who ate cats. His name was Alf, and he was very obviously a puppet. Just like now, any popular TV show was fodder for video games back then, and Alf was no exception. Sega published this gem on the Sega Master System back in 1989. In the game, you control the lovable alien himself as he seeks out parts to fix his spaceship so he can say so long to us boring Earthlings. Unfortunately for Alf, the feds are onto him, and these trenchcoat-wearing creeps try to snatch you up if you get too close. You'll also have to look out for things like bike riders, bats, harpooners, airplanes, and comets, because the second you touch one of them, you die, sending a little Alf-shaped angel up to heaven. The game was pretty bad, so it's no surprise it didn't get a sequel, even if the show lived on in syndication well into the 90s. It was a different time back then. If you missed this show or the game, consider yourself lucky. Lost via DOMUS. Lost was a famously ambitious, twisty, and cryptic TV show that aired between 2004 and 2010. It starred a memorable cast of characters who survived a plane crash on an island whose true nature just kept getting stranger and stranger as the seasons ran on. While the ending might not have satisfied some of the most dedicated fans, the show earned its place in the pantheon of TV worth talking about. In 2008, at the height of the show's popularity, Ubisoft released Lost via DOMUS, a video game centered around a new character who never appeared in the show, surviving through the initial 70 days spent on the island. The game takes place over 7 episodes plotted out by the show's producers Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. Unfortunately, not all of the show's cast members agreed to lend their voices to the game, so core characters like Jack, Kate, Sawyer, and Locke all sound quite different than fans will remember. On the plus side, the story is solid, and the game does feel like you're playing through episodes of the television show. If you have a lost-shaped hole in your life and you missed this Xbox 360 game, now's a good time to give it a shot. Superman 64. Now we come to what is widely regarded as one of the worst video games ever made.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm cool. Oh.
Get out your kryptonite, because you're not going to want this stinker anywhere near you. After the success of Batman the Animated Series in the 90s, it came as no surprise when Warner Brothers and DC Comics made Superman the Animated Series. It also wasn't a surprise when the show inspired a Nintendo 64 game. Unfortunately for fans of comics, cartoons, and video games in general, Superman 64 would turn out to be a truly painful experience. Bearing virtually no resemblance to its source material, Superman 64 offers players a punishing first level. Even though you're the most powerful person on the planet, the game puts you in the clutches of arch-enemy Lex Luthor, who limits your abilities and has you perform a series of tasks like fighting the abysmal controls to fly through hoops in a virtual version of Metropolis. When you're not doing that, you might have to protect a civilian or try to navigate a maze, assuming you can even get past the first level, which is no easy task. Suffice to say that you should avoid this game at all costs. The Simpsons Wrestling. The Simpsons is the longest-running sitcom in the history of television. During its decades on the air, the creative teams behind the show have fleshed out the town of Springfield to the point where it actually feels like a living, breathing city. With such a vibrant world to draw on, game developers have used The Simpsons for all kinds of video games over the years. But just because they can turn The Simpsons into any kind of game doesn't mean they should. One of the most unlikely, and as it turns out, terrible Simpsons games ever made is The Simpsons Wrestling, which landed on the original PlayStation in 2001. Even by the standards of the era, The Simpsons Wrestling was an eyesore with its visual style marred by jagged lines and indistinct backgrounds. Instead of looking like an episode of the show, it looks like it was made in Microsoft Paint. The gameplay was no better thanks to its reliance on button mashing and random power-ups. Not even seeing groundskeeper Willie beat Homer with a rake could make it worth your money. Thankfully, better Simpsons games would come in the following years. If you're in the market for one, try The Simpsons Game or The Simpsons Tapped Out. Well, we hope you enjoyed this list of unknown video games based on TV shows. Did we miss any of your favorites? Make sure you let us know in the comment section below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our great video content in our playlist. Thanks for watching!